Ahead of this video, I got to issue a major update to the story. On Tuesday night, the Multnomah County Prosecutor's Office in Portland announced murder and attempted murder charges against Benjamin Smith, saying they have video that shows Smith approaching the protest group and yelling at them to leave. Protesters tell him to leave. Smith approaches a protester aggressively. The protester then shoves Smith. Shouting continues, and Smith shoots with a handgun, striking multiple people before being shot back by a protester. That protester who returned fire is not being charged. The prosecutor saying, based on review of facts and evidence, implying the prosecutor believes the protester shooter acted defensively. Based on the fact that Smith shot multiple people, a self-defense case for Smith is not likely if he indeed was only shoved by one person before firing. That said, video of the incident has not yet been released publicly, so perhaps more information remains to be seen. Smith, the man now charged, has been hospitalized in critical condition after being shot, and police have not been able to interview him. So we only have the perspective of activists and a district attorney with an appetite to appease them. The version of events delivered by the DA is entirely plausible, but I also know we live in a world of the Kyle Rittenhouse case, where clear video of every moment of the incident justified the actions of the shooter, and bad charges were brought anyway by a politically motivated prosecutor. This was one of those situations where significant new information came out right as I was finishing the edit of this video on Tuesday night. And I considered deleting this video because I hate to deliver outdated or incorrect information. That said, I also hate to delete work that I've already done, and I don't think the statements in this video are factually incorrect. Where some may disagree, I refer you to the link at the top of the video description for the latest information to evaluate the story for yourself, not take my word for it, as would always be my suggestion to you regardless. Thanks for listening, and on to the video. In a weekend dominated by images of Mounties horse trampling an Indian grandma to slow the spread, there was another protest gone wrong that's receiving a lot less attention. Maybe because this wasn't a government crackdown. In fact, it was the opposite. It was a government laydown. Or maybe just because violence in this particular venue is a lot more familiar. Violence, and specifically activist violence in Portland, is borderline not even news at this point. It's like reporting on the rain in that city. It's kind of just what happens. The city is setting murder records. The perpetual state of destruction needs no re-explanation. And of course, we've seen the armed activist shutdown of Portland streets and just plain old cold-blooded political gunshot execution as well. But this latest iteration of violence is still well worth a look. There is an ongoing social media battle to establish what exactly happened, while the police press conference to deliver those facts was obstructed, and the activists who had that microphone surrendered to them still say they aren't being given fair treatment to make their case. Now, to be clear, I am not making this video to assign guilt to anybody. The necessary facts to do that are not out yet. The way the investigation is trending suggests that the activists are the victims in this situation, but it's also possible that they aren't. Wrongful charges have been filed in the past. It's also possible there's some culpability on both sides, but the point is, when we coddle the activism, even within the investigation itself, the truth gets muddled and suffers. So what happened? Well, on Saturday night, activists planned to meet in a park in the northeast part of the city to march in protest of the police shooting of Amir Locke in Minneapolis, among other cases. The march never actually happened because before it could get started, there were shots fired, leaving one woman dead and 5 others injured. How exactly this confrontation began is still a matter of investigation. We know the woman killed was part of the protesters, 60-year-old June Knightley, and we know the man who shot her is a 43-year-old resident of a nearby apartment named Benjamin Jeffrey Smith. Smith has now formally been declared a suspect by police in the incident. Police say charges against him are pending. Demonstrators say that Smith approached them and began yelling at the group before he pulled out a handgun and fired into the crowd, which killed the woman and injured 4 others. And then a protester returned fire, hitting Smith and putting him in critical condition. That's based on statements from the activists themselves. That doesn't mean they're wrong or inaccurate. It just means those are facts alleged from a particular perspective yet to be confirmed by investigators. According to Smith's roommate, police searched their apartment Monday night looking for firearms and computers. Smith has several guns and would sometimes work on guns for others, the roommate says. That roommate also says Smith wasn't a bad guy when she started living with him a few years ago, but that the last 2 years of COVID restrictions and left-wing activism radicalized him and she no longer felt safe around him. Smith's brother said he had no concerns leading up to the shooting. He says he knew his brother had frustrations with protesters in the neighborhood, but otherwise seemed fine when they last spoke a week ago. As of Monday evening, 48 hours after the shooting, Smith's brother hadn't even been able to find him, not through calling hospitals, not through requests with Portland police. "Your police department in Portland sucks," he says to local media. Well, maybe on that we can all agree, even if for different reasons. Meanwhile, Twitter investigators allege that Smith's thirst for violence was even deeper than his roommate suggests, noting that he had a chat history of calling for Proud Boy violence. I've not seen confirmation that these are in fact Smith's posts, but that is what is alleged. The Twitter investigators also allege that it was Andy No's tweets about this protest leading up to it that inspired Smith to commit the shooting, or at least possibly. They have no direct evidence, but they point to Smith subscribing to Andy No on YouTube and sources saying that Smith is a big fan. And speaking of Andy No, he has collected plenty of information that challenges the version of events coming from the activists. Andy says this protest group should not be understood as peaceful demonstrators. He says they're the same group that perpetrated that armed standoff in the streets in May, pointing to specific members with overlap between the two events. Andy has also collected examples of activists coordinating to delete evidence from social media and their phones, refuse to cooperate with investigation, and potentially tamper with physical evidence as well. And it looks like that physical tampering has happened. According to an Oregonian reporter, investigators believe people at the scene may have removed shell casings. Investigators found 8 .45 casings believed to belong to Smith's handgun, and 1 rifle round casing, which isn't further explained, but could be the fire upon Smith. It's not yet proven that removal of casings from this scene happened. It's of course possible that Smith fired 8 shots and only 1 was needed in response, but police are now saying definitively that some physical evidence of some sort was removed, and as Andy No notes, the tactic of scooping the shell casings before investigators arrive has happened before. And regardless of the shell scooping or not, investigators say few witnesses stuck around to speak with police about what exactly happened. Portland police released a statement saying they believe a large number of people witnessed the event and probably recorded it too, but most just left without talking to investigators. Now, is that because of deliberate non-cooperation, or is that because of slow response time? It could be some combination of both, but amid all of those maybes and possiblies and probablys, let's recap what we know and what we don't. We know for sure 1 person dead, an older activist woman, and 5 others injured, including one of the shooters now named as a suspect, a resident of the neighborhood alleged to have confronted the protesters, now in critical condition after having been shot himself. What we don't know with certainty yet is who started what, who pointed first, who shot first, or conclusively, who is responsible for the initiation of this incident. All of that remains under investigation. And so investigators tried to host a press conference on Sunday to deliver what facts are known, and this is where that alleged activist obstruction becomes demonstrated. Portland Police spokesman Nathan Shepard spoke about this incident for all of 30 seconds before the red M&M stormed the stage and shut down the event.
While they were investigating and addressing...
Hey, press! Guess what? You guys want to talk about how a white supremacist kidnapped me and those charges got dropped? I ain't gonna stand here and let these cops lie. I'm not going to stand here and let these cops lie. We've been out here 2 years protesting against police-sanctioned violence.
Or as one commenter put it, maybe it was more like the Kool-Aid man busting through the wall. Of course, given her labored breathing, I'm not sure this woman is even capable of such a physical feat, but whatever coherent points she may have had, she must have eaten them. And now she's barfing them all over the microphone, just insane rantings about a motorcycle gang and Andy No and Ted Wheeler, all of whom are somehow connected to the white supremacist who kidnapped her with a forklift.
Andy No! Andy No! Doxing us! And doxing us. You guys are letting these white supremacists terrorize us in our own city when they are sending gypsy jokers to kidnap us. As Ted Wheeler is telling these white supremacists to stand back and stand by.
And in true Portland tradition, this police spokesman surrendered the mic to these accusations and let these lunatics scream at the sky for a few minutes before he just canceled the event and left.
If you guys want to give them a voice, that's good. I don't think I'll be able to speak today. Okay? So thank you for showing up. I appreciate it.
And of course, even that wasn't good enough. On his way to his car to leave, he was accosted as a race traitor.
Coward!
Hey, coward! You're not telling the truth. You're a person of color. You are
You're gonna just leave?
You person of color.
You can surrender everything to these people, including control of truth and justice itself, the ultimate power, and it's still not good enough because a worldview that rests on oppression as its fundamental premise needs an oppressor forever and always, even if it's nonsensically mutated into the delusion of a white chick yelling at a black guy for being a supposed agent of white supremacy. Even if the activists are the victims in this story, and according to police, the facts are trending that way, that finding will be doubted because they can't agree to a fair process of establishing that fact. If we can't agree on a process for the administration of justice, justice will not be administered. Justice is based on the examination and the evaluation of the evidence, something genuine victims typically don't oppose. Now, you have a right against self-incrimination. You have the right to remain silent, and yes, your non-cooperation with an investigation does not imply your guilt, but the refusal to let other people talk about it is something far beyond those rights. That is not self-protection. That's the exertion of power over others. That's not opting out. That's sabotage. That's the perversion of justice into no investigation, no examination, just I speak, you shut up and listen. Or else. And whoever is at fault for this incident, we all have to recognize that vision of justice will not produce peace, let alone truth. Only more conflict. Exactly the sort of factional warfare making Portland famous in recent years. Because if we can't agree on the value of the fact-finding, we have nothing to agree on, and our disputes will be settled through violence rather than a civil process. It'll just be a war of iron fists swinging for perpetual vengeance, and in that scenario, well, the activists better hope that those fists are as tough as they advertise. Thanks as always for listening and for supporting this channel. Always appreciate that thoughtful discussion down below, and especially over on Parler, that is at ML Christiansen. You're always welcome to coming out and chat in my live streams. Those are linked down in the description. Looking forward to it. Goodbye.